So, it's been an exciting and active 48 hours in the Fab world. Now, everyone and their dog has been weighing in with their opinions on Fab 2.0, and I know some probably expected an episode from me about it. That said, I don't really have a ton to say regarding 2.0 that's different than anyone else. All in all, I think the announcement was a net positive. I'm excited for the future, and yes, I want to avoid white border cards at all costs. So in tonight's video, I want to talk about the one thing that I walked away from the announcement with some concerns about, and that's the signature weapon system. I believe that the rotation of powerful, perhaps overpowerful weapons is a very, very necessary mechanism, but the current method of pairing a specific weapon with a specific hero has some fundamental glaring problems. So tonight I'm running down what I mean, why I think that, and how I think and hope this system will evolve going forward. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Andrew with you here, as always. Thank you guys very, very much for checking in tonight, even more so than normal, because I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the Fab world right now, right? All sorts of people to go check out and places to go get content. So I appreciate you checking in for our little pie of the 2.0 discussion, which, you know, as I acknowledged going in, it's a little different. I mean, you know, it's not that I don't have an opinion on Fab 2.0. That's certainly not the case. And actually, if you are interested in kind of the in-depth info, I was a guest over at Dead on Board. Vinny B had me over, and we did I think it was 2.5, 3 hours after the drop. We kind of talked about it and just, you know, kind of gave our first reaction opinion. So if you're interested, I'll put a link below. You can go check that out. I had a really great time, really great video. But you know, in terms of coming on here and, you know, giving you guys another rehash of 2.0, you guys have seen it 20 times, and, you know, me reading to you and stuff like that. I mean, you guys can read. And so like I said, I just wanted to talk tonight about, you know, the kind of the one thing that stuck with me over the last 48 hours. You know, I know there's a lot of different opinions on the first edition and finance side of that. And I did see the Rudy video. It was interesting, different perspective. You know, it doesn't mean I agree with it, but, you know, it's interesting perspective. So yeah, a lot of opinions out there. So anyway, before we get into this tonight, I do want to thank our sponsor, FabDB. Remind all you guys that when you're over there doing your deck building, doing your collection management, I know all you guys are over there already because it's an awesome resource, probably the best one for us on the webs. Also check out the Wrathe Times while you're over there, which is a, you know, written word content creator site. They do a great job. So while you're over there on FabDB, consider upgrading your account and unlock a whole bunch of other additional features. And thank you to our sponsors, FabDB. All right, so tonight what I wanted to focus in on was this specialized weapon part, which is essentially a rotation mechanism for weapons. I mean, that's what it is. Now, what they've done, I'll throw the image up here. I know you guys have seen it from the article. Well, most of you have seen it from the article. Otherwise, where are you here, right? I mean, yeah. So what they've done is they've associated a weapon to a hero. And I believe that's the right way to say that because the weapon goes away with the hero, not the other way around, right? So they've associated the weapon with the hero. Basically, they're like, you know, Anathos is Bravo's hammer. When Bravo retires and goes across the great mountains of Wrathe or whatever, he will take with him Anathos, right? So, which is kind of cool, right? It's kind of a cool concept, but let's be very clear about this. Oh, and you guys will notice we're doing this PTI style tonight, mostly so I forget or remember to hit all the points that I want to hit, right? But this whole thing, this whole concept is, let's be very clear about this. This is a flavor focus. It's a flavor first design, right? It is a flavor and lore based design, more so than a game balance function, right? And that's fine in practicality, right? But in reality, the removal of a lot of these pieces being associated with what they're associated to is odd, and it creates a couple problems, especially in the multiple formats. But anyway, we'll get to that. So yeah, that's the thing, right? Is the flavor first concept, and that probably the easiest the thing to remember going through this is that that's just the way these games work, right? 99.9% of the time in these games, the broken or the powerful interactions aren't the ones that design intended, right? They're especially usually not the thematic ones, but usually they're the unforeseen pairings, right? Stuff that unforeseen pairings, unforeseen interactions, right? Stuff like that. And Rosetta Thorn is a great example of that. Right now, I don't know on the playtesting side if it wasn't, whatever. But Rosetta Thorn goes away with Briar, meaning that in order for Rosetta to retire in this fashion, right? Doesn't mean they couldn't ban it or restrict it or something like that, right? But in order for it to go away they can't restrict because they did away with restricted list, but yeah, you guys get it. In order for Rosetta to rotate out in this fashion, it has to go with Briar, which means that Briar has to LL. Now, realistically, at least today, if you were to project it, it looks to me like probably the person best positioned to LL out next is likely Viserai, right? So Viserai is largely getting to where he is because he has a whole bunch of good stuff. He can do crazy consistent things. But Rosetta Thorn made him a huge threat, right? And Rosetta Thorn, like if he LLs out using Rosetta Thorn, but doesn't take Rosetta Thorn, then Rosetta Thorn's there for Chane to pick up and potentially do nasty things with. And it's just kind of weird, right? So, and again, I want to be very clear, like I said, that this is very clearly a lore-focused move for them, but it still carries weight, right, from a practical type standpoint. It still carries that weight, and it does impact the game, in many cases negative, right? So, the Rosetta thing, it's like, okay, well, we can't wait for Rosetta Thorn to go away. How are we going to do it? If you're a glass half full, glass half empty guy, you're like, well, Nebula Blade going away, there's no impact. That's a good thing. But, the glass half empty guy's like, well, but Rosetta Thorn has no way to go away until Briar goes away, right? So I get it. It's whichever side of the fence you're on. But, and I do want to remind everybody also that, I kind of raised this concept. This was way back in the day during the Ira meta. I raised the concept of, hey, maybe we should have some sort of balancing or removal mechanism for weapons. I think we could do a living legend weapon thing. They'd have to go back and look at deck lists and recalculate, and it'd be a ton of work. I'm not saying it wouldn't be. But come on, there's a crazy nerd who'll do that for you for a cold foil, like they will. So, you look at Ira, right? And Ira uses the Kodachis better than anybody else in Blitz, right? There's very little argument on that just for her +1. And we again, I'll link the video. We talked about it at length. But she rotates out and she takes his Edge of Autumn with her, which I think has hit the table outside of a learn to play like 0 times, right? You use the Kodachis. And Katsu, if Katsu goes away, which could happen, right? Katsu could get aggro Katsu could get very good. Then she loses it, which is fine, right? But it's the other way around. It's like Ira, who uses the Kodachi's best, goes away and takes a weapon that's basically complete. It's very similar to the Viserai thing, right? So you start to see where I'm going here. And so those are the, I guess, the glass half full ones where... No, sorry, those are the glass half empty ones. Well, whatever. It's a bad analogy. Forgive me, bad analogy. But that's on the one side where the weapons that are, but like, again, because Kodachis are crazy good weapons, right? So if you were to want the Kodachis to go away, you have to do Katsu, but the person who uses them the best, in that format at least, isn't affected by it. And again, that applies to Rosetta Thorn. You then have it on the other side, like the ones that really have me concerned are Cintauri, now with the exception that we'll talk about in a minute, right? But Cintauri, Saber, and Mandible Claw, right? Mandible Claw is associated to Kayo. Cintauri, Saber obviously is Kassai. But like that means that when Kassai goes away, you can't use Dory or Boltyn Sabers. Like that's kind of a bummer. And like most of the cool decks that I've seen with Rhinar use the claws, right, for your Blood Rush Bellows play. Even Levia or Levia, she uses the Mandible Claws as well. And losing those through collateral damage kind of blows, right? Because you lose those deck play styles that may not even be, necessarily top tier, but very creative. And then, on the flip side, like the axes have no way to go. They have no way to go away. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, so remember, right? Heroes accrue points in each format separately, right? You accrue your Living Legend points in CC, and you accrue Living Legend points in Blitz, and they're different. So I'm currently operating under the assumption, which I think is reasonable, that the signature weapon retires only in the associated format, right? So if well, Starvo's bad example because he's on CC, right? But so let's say aggro Katsu goes away in CC. I believe you're still able to play aggro Katsu you're able to play Katsu in Blitz, so Kodachis would still be legal in Blitz, right? I'm like 99% sure that's how it'll work. It's how it's going to work, right? So you do, the Cintauri Saber example I used, the Mandible Claws example I used, those would still be legal in CC again. So that's definitely a glass half full type thing of this is like, well, the impact is only to one format, but that's kind of weird too. I mean, but again, that's no different than the rotation. They're different formats, so that's fine. So I just did want to keep that in mind, but it still affects within that format. And it also means, right, so I'll bring the table up again, right? That also means that by this system, there's no way for the Cintauri Sabers to ever be rotated out other than just a ban in CC, right? That's the only mechanism by which to do that, right? So again, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing, like, and I get it. But that's what I say, it's the system itself, just on the surface from what we know, has already you can just start poking a lot of holes in it. So I'm kind of hoping there's a better way that we'll do it in the future. And, I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but there are certain weapons out. And again, this isn't the end of the world. There are a lot of, I'm not saying that every weapon needs to rotate out. Just like every hero doesn't need to rotate out because they won't, right? Azalea is probably playable forever, right? But, they're not using it as a safety valve, but then not having a safety valve available for certain things, right? Because again, you set that precedence like, yeah, this is the way, right? Living Legend is the way that a hero that becomes too good goes away. But the check valve isn't there for weapons in the same manner, right? And then you take collateral damage. So it's just very weird. And then you also run into, like I'm worried about Valda. Like Valda, she didn't come out with a signature weapon, which in of itself isn't a problem. Except you have to conceptually believe that Valda was play tested with Anathos, right? By and large, she probably was, because it's actually pretty good with her, right? Except for in the matchups, you want the Lantern for the offhand, right? So if she's tested with Anathos and then she loses Anathos, well, that kind of blows for Valda, right? And again, sure, they can print more weapons. Obviously, they're going to print more weapons. That's part of this, I assume. But again, it's just more like harmful friendly fire unintended consequences, right? So, and then last thing on this, and then I'll kind of give final thoughts and get out of here is, it also doesn't. I also thought it was weird because Stalagmite is Oldhim Shield, right? And shouldn't his, and again, you could make this to equipment and all that too, right? But Stalagmite, the lore specifically says it's Oldhim's, so shouldn't that go away with Oldhim too, right? Like, shouldn't he take his hammer and his shield, right? I think the shield should be on there, right? System be damned, all the other stuff we said apart and irrelevant, applying just their logic, looking at this just on the surface, Stalagmite should be on this table too, right? From a pure flavor standpoint. So that's weird, right? But what, I guess anybody can pick up the shield, but then anybody can pick up the weapon as they can now. So anyway, that's fundamentally, hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. It's like, I'll be clear, I'm not attacking the system. I think having a lore-focused system like this is perfectly fine. It does give some variety and spice. But again, it's, over the years, and, like we talked about, the Living Legend status, say what you will, want what you will, has become that safety valve. And there was no way it was going to be anything else, right? It's just the way it is. So having that safety valve also now hit, it's not safety valving the weapons. I guess that's it. So, what I would like to see, I would like to see some sort of, if they're going to do it this way, I'd like to see the weapons be able to accrue their own points in some way. And again, I know managing that's a little harder, but it's once you get the system up and running, it's not, right? So I don't know. That's just my take on it. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. I didn't go too in depth onto the the logic on Kodachis and stuff because we'd already talked about it before. You can go check that out. I'll throw it up there and you can go check out. But what do you think? Right? What do you think about this system? Am I just being too technical and I just need to roll with the lore? That's fair feedback. So anyway, folks, thanks very much for tuning in and joining me tonight. And just want to remind everybody, if you're still looking for those singles to try and round out your, I'm still looking for some Runeblade cards. So if you're still looking for those singles like I am, head on over to my buddy at Fab Foundry. Travis does a good job over there as always. And you can use the code below for a little kickback to my end on your purchase, which is much appreciated. Help me keep giving my money back to him, and the cycle continues. So anyway, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you guys back very shortly for some other videos and other thoughts. See you this weekend. And if nothing else, folks, go Commando.